Okay, Prof, I think we can begin in the interest of time.
Go ahead.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to everyone for joining us this morning to enjoy some of the foods and thoughts from our colleagues and professionals in the quality fraternity. So today we are going to have one of our SASQ lift of webinars as we begin the World Quality Month of November, which is preceded by the World Quality Week. And today we're going to have our session led by one of our esteemed professionals, Ms Lerato Ntatamala, a senior manager in the governance risk from National Metrology Institute, and also represents SASQ as a vice chair, but also involved as a secretariat in AfriMets in terms of the metrology fraternity. So well experienced, well-rounded, is going to be with us today as a guest speaker. And we would like you to put all the questions on the chat during the session, but we will allow a Q&A at the end of the session. And SASQ, just to remind some of those that may not be aware, SASQ is a professional body in the country that has been involved with quality from the early 80s in manufacturing, in education, higher education institutions, and other fraternities. And we have a scheme that allows professionals to continue their progression in terms of management systems practitioner, is our scheme that we have currently, to become a member. So feel free to contact us after the session, and just to ensure that you become part of the community of experts and professionals in the fraternity. So I will hand over now to Lerato to take us through the session, and we will allow then the session Q&A at the end of the session. Thank you, Lerato. I hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Solani, for the good introduction. To everyone who has joined, as they've already introduced me, my name is Lerato Ntatamala. I'm the Senior Manager for Governance, Risk and Compliance, and I work for the National Metrology Institute of South Africa. So I'll be sharing how the management system is done in metrology. So I hope you are going to enjoy and are going to learn, and this is going to make a difference into your lives and into your operations. So I'm going to be covering the following points: metrology, management systems for science of measurements, traceability of measurement, management systems and digitalization, and linking management systems, policies, procedures, and records. So these are the things that I'm planning to cover in this session. Firstly, people used to get mixed in between metrology and meteorology. And I know most people know meteorology for the weather services, where they are responsible for the weather forecast and other related things. But now, metrology is something different. Metrology is a science of measurements. Metrology is where measurements are studied. Like when I say measurements, I mean all measurements, anything that you can think of that is measured. And someone can ask okay, fine, we hear you. What is measurements? Yes, you say metrology is a science of measurements, but what is measurements? Measurements is something that is used to identify the characteristics and the quality of a substance or of a property, something that is helped to describe the properties and the characteristics of something that you will be facing. And that can end up providing a number to that thing that you are trying to get, to a substance, to a property, describing what that thing is. And that number has a unit. And again, it is a property, is a process to quantify and compare against a reference. When we measure something, we compare that thing that we're measuring against a measuring reference about something, so that we can know, like, okay, fine, this is exactly what this thing is, where we can get a number or we can just get a full description. And then I gave like an example, like when we want to know the size of something, that size is measured. And when it's measured, you can get like, oh, this is 30 by 30 square meters. This is those kind of things. And when we get to point now, it's a 30 by 30 square meter. That square meter, that is a meter, it is a unit that is associated to a number. When we say 30, 30 will be a number, but a number of what? Is a number in meters. A meter is a unit that is used to measure when we want to measure those kind of things. And things like the weight, we all step on the scales like, oh, I want to check my weight and I want to get how much I weigh. That you are measuring. And then the shape of something, the flatness of something, the sphere, the round shape of something, you are measuring those things. The sound, we are measuring. And the length, like, okay, fine. I've managed to cover like 10 kilometers today. What were you using to make sure that you covered the 10 kilometers? You were measuring something there. So you can see we deal with measurements almost every day in our lives. In everything that we do, we measure. So we use instruments and equipment to carry the measurements. And mainly measurements are done in the laboratory. The basics of measurements in most cases are done in the laboratory, so that when you go out there, you can use those properties, those characteristics that you obtained. And then I can give maybe an example of things that are measured, but you sometimes feel like, no, I didn't know that this is measured. An example, we have the so-called acoustics. Acoustics has something to do with sound, to measure sound. The sound of the microphones, like now as you're speaking, you are listening to me, you are hearing my voice. But someone can say like, you are speaking loud, because you might have measured the level of the voice, the level of the sound from my voice. And there's also an ultrasound that needs to be measured. Yes, we can measure things like physically here, we can measure, but there are the so-called sound underwater, which is the ultrasound. How do we measure the ultrasound? We need to know, like, let me say, the heartbeat of an unborn baby in the mother's womb. The baby is in the water, but we need to get to here and get that sound. And also the vibration. When things vibrate, you can get the magnitude of that vibration. And then the gas is just a simple thing. There was a time where there was COVID, people were like, no, I need oxygen. They put him on oxygen. That oxygen on its own is prepared and measured and canned in the cylinders, sent to hospitals or sent to everywhere where they use the different kind of gases. So that's where measurement play a role there. The purity of those oxygen. Can you imagine if they give you oxygen that is not like pure? And they said, yeah, we put him or her on oxygen, but there's some impurities there. So we need that measured for the purity. And when we grow up, those who studied science, there was a term called, is a definition for force, saying force is a push or a pull. We do get those measurements that will help us to know how much force was applied on something to get it cracked or to break it or to do something. And then there is a turning force called torque. Like when you open a lid or something, you turn that around. That is a force, but it's not a push or a pull. If you can pull that thing, it's not going to open, but you have to apply that force. That is called torque. When you apply that torque, that's then the lid will open. That also is measured. The hardness of an object is measured. How do we measure those? And like example, the temperature. We were told like, oh, the temperature is now, today is between 5, it will maybe rise up to 21. How do they do those things? They apply measurements, they apply metrology. The time and frequency, the seconds, when you take your time, like, oh, this time is, and then this time is this much, and then this time is differing from the time in other country or overseas with this many hours, is behind, we are ahead. We measure those things. That's why measurement is very important to understand exactly. And like, I'll give an example again, in the mass space, we all go shopping. We buy food, we go to the market, to butchery, wherein they put the things that you are buying on scale. How sure are you that when they say the meat that you want here is 100 rands because it weighs this weight, how sure are you that what you're paying is really value for money for the product that you are getting? I'll get to that point when I get to my other slides. So I'm just trying to put like example of the few things that are measured for you to have comfort and be like sure that you are paying for what you are getting. Like the volume, we have liters, milliliters, things are pegged, the density, the length, like the ruler that we use. We have the 15 centimeters, we have the 30. How sure are you? Where is that developed? Where is that manufactured? What standards did they use to compare when they get to this figure that, okay, fine, this is a 15 centimeter. The angles, how sure are you that when they say this is a 90 degrees angle, is this really a 90? We need measurements to get to that. The radio frequencies, we speak over the phone, we get all these things. How do we like ensure that the radioactivity, the contamination, and then something very interesting, the light. There are certain areas where a certain amount, a certain candela of light is required. And then they come and monitor. We have the so-called, the occupational hygienists. We pay them a lot of money to come and check things and measure things, the lights according to the OSH Act, where it's required for the general environmental conditions. You find that they give you a report. And on that report, they just mentioned all those they listed. Where was that reference to? Where is the basic? Where did they obtain these figures? Are their instruments like really in a good state? Are they calibrated to can perform and give us this light that they say it is? The colors. We need colors, like especially manufacturing where they produce the colors of the car and the colors of almost everything that you can think of. Those again needs to be measured. The direct light and frequency. We use electricity. Our radios, we use batteries in so many things. Now people have these solar systems and other things. The current that is going in there, that you're going to bring into your house now and you install on your roof, how sure are you that the volts that are written on that battery are exactly what will be accepted in your tools in your house? We used to have issues before where people said their TVs banned, the electronic components just got banned, they're no longer functioning, the battery and the like. You can go back and try to see what is written on that thing. Like, okay, this can only contain this quantity of volts, of amperes, but you end up introducing a high volume to your equipment and you burn your stuff in the house. So that's how important measurement is. And that's how important you can get to learn to certain things if you are not like yet equipped with that. the humidity. There are some areas where a certain moisture content in the air is not supposed to be, and that needs to be measured. We have the hygrometers and other things that do measure that. Do we understand why do we really need to be equipped with measurements? And then a very simple example that I used to tell people, the pressure. We all go to the garages to fill our cars. We just go like, okay, fine. Can you put maybe 250 kilopascal on my tires? And they go, psst. Once they're done, we just drive off. How sure are you that they put that pressure that was requested there? The equipment that they use, those regulators, when last were they calibrated to ensure that the measurements that are reading on those regulators are correct? Same applies even in the petrol that we put in, the flow. They just put, we live. We're not even sure that I paid 1,000 for this petrol is sitting below the half tank. Is it really, really, really is corresponding to the money that I'm paying? So there's some everyday things, the food that we eat, the food safeties. There are things like mycotoxins, aflatoxins, preservatives that they put in our food. Some we don't even know what are those things. We don't even bother to measure. The food are canned where you can read the chemical composition of the food that you're eating. That's where measurements plays a role. You must be sure of that. And then the flow of things. We go to hospital, they put drips like this must drop maybe at this velocity. We don't even bother to check if really that's the velocity that this drip is flowing inside my body. The ionizing radiation, we go for chemos, we go for all these things, we get doses. Are we sure that the doses that we're getting are the ones that are required? The equipment that they use, when last were they calibrated? When last were they checked whether they are administering the required amount, the measure? So I'm trying to explain the importance of measurements. And someone can say like, but it's like you're only talking about measurements in the labs and measurements everywhere. The measurements are also in some areas that you can even ask yourself like, even here. So you can think like almost every day when you run, when you do things, since we woke up this morning, measurements have been applied in so many things. Like now we're sitting, we're talking, measurement is in force. So you can see measurement is in force in every way. And again, measurements, they help us to support trade. Everything that we sell every day, everything that we buy, the imports that gets in our country, the exports, the things that we send out. There was a time where I once read somewhere where they said there are tons of oranges that were dumped somewhere in the sea because they didn't meet the specifications as required. Meaning when they sampled and measured, they were not at their level of acceptance. So that's where they didn't allow them to enter their countries. And we can go back to us like everything, sorry, everything that we accept in our country, are they of high quality? Are they measured to a point of where we can accept them and they are safe for us? There are so many cases wherein you found that things are not turning out to be the way they are. Some they end up even hurting people, injuring people, losing properties, things exploding. There were some paraffin crema stoves at some point. They just like, they were not of good quality and they ended up like just burning things and people. So you can see the loss that we get when we are not measuring things. At the manufacturing, when we manufacture, like where we produce things, measurements is important. In the healthcare, let me say where they prepare the cosmetics, they need to measure all the ingredients that they put together. So I'm giving all this example trying to tell like the instruments that we use, the equipment that are used in measurements, they need to be complying and also be calibrated to make sure that they are in line with the required standards. I'll explain where I get better because this has everything to do with management systems. So everything that has to do with measurement underpins the economy, including our national economy. And all these things are supported. I just said the quality system here, but they're supported by all other systems, the management systems that I'll talk to as we go to the next slides. And then metrology, which is the science of measurements, it forms part of the national quality infrastructure of South Africa. I will explain how. The national quality infrastructure, it is an institution that it was established and it is helping the nation with a framework that establishes and implements the practices of standardization, including conformity assessment services and metrology and accreditation. So metrology, I'll be using the term metrology, just bear it in mind that always when I say metrology, I'm talking about a science of measurements. It has everything to do with measurements. So if you can see on this structure that I put down here, economy, it is at the topmost. We're surviving, we are here as a nation because of how our economy performs. And then there is quality management there, which is underpinning. And then there is quality management there, which is underpinning. Someone has unmuted. I can hear myself. There is a quality management that is covering the national quality infrastructure and which is happening under the standardization, under the metrology, the testing, and the accreditation. So I'll explain further what does this mean. And then quality management, it needs the systems to be complete and to help us achieve what we want to achieve as a nation. So I mentioned metrology, standardization, and conformity assessment. Under metrology, there's also something called, we have scientific metrology, industrial metrology, and legal metrology. And then these pillars here, we have metrology, which is currently managed by the National Metrology Institutes. And then for South Africa, we have the National Metrology Institute of South Africa that is mandated by the Measurement Unit and Measurement Standard Act to help disseminate traceability to all industries, meaning that the measurements areas that I was explaining in the second or third slide, they are applicable in the industries, meaning the Republic of South Africa mandated the Metrology Institute to ensure that the measurements that we do as the nation, they are all traceable to the international measurement systems. Because when you package your things, you say a kilogram, you have to make sure that the balance that you use get traceability, and it must go up and link to all the measurements that are done throughout the whole world. We can't weigh something here in South Africa and it gives us like maybe 1 kilogram. But when we take it to another country, it is less or more. I see a hand. There's a hand that is raised, Prof.
Just continue, Lerato. That's
okay,
easy.
thank you. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm still explaining that all the measurements that we do as a nation, they must be comparable to the measurements throughout the whole world. They are the so-called technical barriers to trade, wherein you found that our measurements are nowhere close to how the world measures things. And do you think that we can be able to trade internationally or even in the region, whereas we are producing the substandard things that are even measured low or higher, meaning our standards have problems? So the Metrology Institute enables the industries, I'll show you when I get to the traceability of measurements, enables the industries to make sure that everything that we do as a nation, they are comparable to what the whole world does. So there's a lot of work that is done there. And then there is, again, the legal metrology, which is also part of the conformity assessment, which is currently not sitting at NIMISA, but is sitting at the NRCS. So that's part of the metrology. And then we also have the standards that are guiding us as the nation on how to go about standardizing things, and also accreditation for attesting the technical competencies that we have as the nation as compared to other nations. That also supports to ensure that the management systems that we have in place, they are comparable. And we have to work together. You can see in metrology, we need standards that we work with. And then those standards, after we've implemented, we need accreditation. That's where SANA steps in. And then for the standards, that's where SABS steps in. And then we work together with the metrology bodies. So you can see the national quality infrastructure is not only housed in one institute. These are the 4 technical institutes of the Department of Trade and Industry offering those services. Then now we get management systems that is in the metrology space. So metrology, the sense of measurements that we do, is managed and organized in a structured way. They are the processes that are systematically connecting to each other that are helping the organization to achieve the planned objectives. And the planned objectives, it means that they come from the mandate that the metrology is mandated by the nation. So for the organization to be able to achieve, we need the management systems to be in place. The management system, the subsystems that work together, that they get together, they connect, they co-create meaning for how the science of measurements are managed. And then we are also guided by the plan, do, check, and cycle, the PDCA cycle, meaning that for everything that we do, and like I said, it's not only for the laboratory. We have the sections like the supporting groups, the human resources, the IT, the finance, the supply chain, our own internal audits for the whole organization, the governance, communication, marketing. You can see this is not only applicable to the little space where maybe the laboratories are, or the little space where you can say, yeah, we're producing this, we're offering these services. There are some support systems that, if they're not considered, they can hinder the success of the management system. Meaning that we have to consider all those. I've seen most people say that, no, we can only put the management systems for this small laboratory. That laboratory is supported by other external components, other functions within the organization. They can make the management systems successful. You can't do that as a standalone, because most of the management systems are based on the international standards. Those ISO standards, they've got requirements and clauses and elements that needs to be provided from other non-technical functions within the institute. So it's very important to also consider those. And even them, I know here we have visitors today who maybe are not responsible for management systems. When you are approached in your section as a leader or as an officer or a practitioner, cooperate with those people, because the management systems is an overall organizational activity, and not organizational only. It involves other third parties, external parties are involved. So this also assists in continuous improvement, where we continue improving the management systems that we have. We do have things like audits, things like assessments. I'll explain the difference between audits and assessment in the space where I work. The policies, the procedures, we review them, and we have the processes that are documented. The role description that defines what each person should do within an organization. And by then, it will be helping to make everyone part of the game, because we all need to be involved. There is inclusivity there. There should not be anyone who says, me, I won't do this. And then someone once said to me, like, you, Lerato, you want us to document things. I'm sure even in your house, you do things according to procedures, which helps a lot, because procedures means that even when you are away, someone knew when they join the organization or when they come, they will take over and just run with it. You are all going to be doing things the same way and producing the same results. And when you are to improve, you'll be improving throughout. And then I normally call audits for the audits, like for our certification and other things. And then the assessments that way, it includes the review and witnessing of the technical competencies on those people who are involved in measurements. And then role description I've explained. And then the management system in the measurement space forms part of the strategy, and it enhances sustainability. I'm saying this because you find that in some areas, the management systems are detached from the overall organizational visions and missions. So the management system in the metrology space forms part of our strategic documents, our annual performance plannings, wherein there are some key performance indicators, apart from the ones that are managed at operational level for achieving this and this for our products and services and other things. There are also those key performance indicators that are listed up at the higher level, and they are also reported to our shareholder, which is the Department of Trade and Industry, and also to our minister. They are tabled in Parliament. Things like customer satisfaction. We are monitored on how we serve our customers. And we are also monitored on the number of accreditations that we maintain, the number of laboratories, the number of the systems that we get accredited. So our management system is key, because we can't get certification, we can't get accreditation without management system. So this is very critical for the organization. It's very critical to the science of measurements, because they form part of what is making us sustain. And then also the management of the risk and opportunities is done through the measurement systems within the metrology space. And this also, the maintenance of our measurement systems also helps us in cost reduction for quality. Some people say that quality is expensive, but just wait a moment and see how much it costs to correct things that you should have done them right first time. And in the metrology space, I think it's the next slide, the management system is helped to maintain our international recognizability. Should we lose that, we are not going to be able to be in a good position at an international level, at a SASQ level, at a regional level, meaning that there will be doubts on the things that we produce, on the things that we do, the services. And remember, when they doubt the National Metrology Institute of South Africa, they are doubting South Africa. So meaning management systems are key in the measurement space. And then the measurement systems for the science of measurements, they underpin the total quality management system that we have, meaning that the long-term success of the NMISA and the continual satisfaction of our customers is based on the management system. Because for those who know the ISO standards and other things, there are some clauses that speaks directly to how you serve your customers. And there's a saying that says customers are key. So that's why we had a KPI that speaks to that. And we operate our management systems in an integrated format, meaning that we have the safety management system, the occupational health and safety one, which also is integrated with the environmental one, and we also have the quality management system. So we have a division that is responsible for this SASQ management system. Someone can ask, like, integrated, what does that mean? It means that we have one system that is implemented jointly. We have like pack of documents that responds to the requirements from the safety standards, the health standards, the environmental standard, and the quality standards. And then we also have some like the business continuity standards. We do have those, but I didn't put them in here because we are not yet certified to those. So I just listed only those that were certified on. So even those that I'm saying, implementing a new system, you don't need to go all the way out trying to get this and that. You use the system that you only have, and then to make sure that they talk to those other things. So the management system, they support the accurate measurements and the core business, the conformance. So these are the measurement systems that we have. We have implemented management system for calibration and for testing, for reference material production, for proficiency testing. These three that I've mentioned up here, they are accredited. Accreditation is not the same as certification. The two are certified. On accreditation, we also look at the technical competency of the team that is performing those measurements. And then I've explained this. So the accreditation that we have, I say they support the calibration competencies, the capabilities of measurements that we have as the nation as compared to the international measurements. So we must always compare, and our results must be in line with what the whole world has. And if they come back not being in line, it means our management systems have something that we need to really go back and look at and correct and continue improving. So measurement traceability, this is the metrological traceability, is also supported by the management system, meaning that we must submit our management system all the time at an international level wherein they get looked at, and if we're still within, we continue measuring and taking care of the uncertainties, because when you measure, there are certain uncertainties that can turn out your measurements to be in a certain way, but those are also controlled through management system. So this is a traceability chain that I indicated when we started, that we are mandated to make sure that we are disseminating traceability to the industries. So you can see we have the international units. We have things like the meter, the amperes, the seconds, the kilograms. Those are the units that are used in all industries. So these things are derived from the international standards. So we have fiscal standards. Apart from the paper standards that SABS helps us with, they are the fiscal standards that we have that we refer. We have the primary standards and secondary standards. We make sure that our primary standards, they are in line with the standards throughout the whole world for the kilogram. I'll give an example. And then we have the national standards that we keep as at the National Metrology Institute levels. Each and every country throughout the world, they have their own NMIs. Here we have our NMISA. So these standards, that's where we come up with the reference standards that we can use to calibrate the industry standards. When your laboratories and other people, they bring the standards to us, they just want to assist to make sure that they're still in line with how they should be. They're not less or more, and with minimum certainties, the uncertainties that are put in there. So these standards, they're going to be your working standards from your laboratories, mostly that you use for quality checks and other things. And then the instruments that we use to process and other things. This is just a summary of why you need your instruments to be calibrated, because some people can argue that you are not providing them with the measurements, with the products that meet the requirements of the measurements as defined by the global measurement systems. Then a indicated measurement system and digitalization. This I will skip. This is just a summary of what is there in the standards under control of data and information management, which is 7.11 in the ISO 17025. I can't explain this, but here, management system and digitalization, to digitalize things, this is to enable or to improve of the processes by leveraging digital technologies and digitalized data. Meaning that we now have the online shopping, the digital payment method, the online learning platforms. We don't go out there and do things. So even within the measurement space, we have introduced digitalizations of our customer management system, wherein we have centralized all the measurement services that are required. We have developed the customer portal and the self-service of all what we're offering, meaning that when you want something, you go to our website, you look at what you want, and then we also considered the POPIA consideration when you submit all your informations, and then access to data such as you see how long it takes, the turnaround time of completing something, and the lead times for doing things, and also our financial things, the POs, the invoicing that are managed through that system. And then the IoT is also a way that we also have the QR code, and we issue the digital certificates that are signed digitally. So we are trying to really make it simple for our customers, which is part of our management system and customer service that we offer as required by the standards. And then linking policies here, I just wanted to indicate like our management system, we do audit the system, and then we do get assessed for our accreditation part. So we audit against the ISO standard, we audit against the legal and other requirements, against the conformity assessment bodies requirements, because there are some areas where in our case, we are assessed by SANAS. So SANAS also have their regulations, their requirements that as the bodies that require services that require to be accredited, we have to go and make sure that we comply with those T documents, R documents. And then we're also audited against our organizational policies and procedures, because some people will argue like, but the standard says this, but what did you document? Because your documents are very binding, because what you said you'll do on your documents, when you get audited, we'll look at that as well. So this is what has happened at NIMISA, and then the records that you generate, you can't say you have implemented a standard, a requirement or a clause or something, whereas there's nothing supporting that. Remember, there's the so-called evidence-based audit. We need to see what you generated. So in the management systems within the measurement space, we also keep records that we generate. And then again, the turnaround time of providing those audit evidence, because some people just disappear like we're coming and they're gone. So no records, not done. So take home questions for all of us. I know we're all practitioners here. And someone can say, no, me, I don't work in the space of practicing, but you are your own management system practitioner for your own life. What I've indicated when we started here, it doesn't only apply within the organizations, even personally, some of these things they apply. And now you'll also learn when you go out maybe for some services, you will now try to see the measurements. I used to go like at the shops to check the balance or the scale where we weigh our things. Is this calibrated? Did SANA stickers appear here? Did this? I check on those, because if it's not, it's either we're robbing the supplier or they're robbing us. That's one thing. So I put these few questions, like as practitioners now, we're responsible for implementing systems. We're responsible for auditing. We're responsible for maintaining and improving our systems. So number one, do we know our customers' requirements and expectations? Do we give them what they want? Because you can't give something that someone doesn't know. And this is covered in our standards. And then are we offering the quality service and products to them? What is a quality product to you? What are the quality controls that we have in place to make sure that your quality is still within the specifications that's required? Are we doing that consistently? And lastly, our internal processes, are they functioning optimally? Do we have lots of rejects? Do we have lots of defects? Do we have lots of errors? Because this also talks to your funds. Can we improve on that? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lerato, for that wonderful presentation. And I hope everybody got to get the nuggets from this. I think, the key things that you've touched on that are very fundamental. The management system is scientific, science of measurement. I think quality is science. That's what was emphasized. Management system and digitization. I think you also touched on something very key for business that enables, the processes to be seamless and fluid under digitization. And then the other thing that is very key in the quality fraternity as a whole is traceability, measurement, traceability, whether it's calibration, the unit standards that you touched on in terms of weights and measurements and so forth. I think one can even relate this to some of, day-to-day basics. We had a bread issue with one of the big, companies, JSE listed company, whereby customers were robbed of what they were paying for, but they were getting less bread in terms of the weight. And also we have a lot of complaints sometimes in terms of people buying coupons, electricity. Are they paying, are they getting what they paid for, These are just day-to-day things, fuel, you test on fuel, in the garage, how do we know that what the liters we're getting, is what we're paying for? So these are day-to-day activities. So also it just reminds us to always take into cognizance the value that these national quality institutions play in enabling the economy, making our lives, better and seamless. Today is the last day of AGOA, and AGOA, we have in the trade agreements with US, as Africa, and us, we are hosting. And there's discussions about the trade, and this is where then there's MOUs and bilateral agreements through use of standardization, Africa agreements, African regional standards, ISO standards. Management system is at the core of trade and enabling trade for the world over. So I think this message that you gave us today really was very fundamental and makes us, take into cognizance the value of quality as a whole, whether it's measurement, certification, accreditation, and running businesses. So I think I'll open the floor for questions. Prof, I see some questions on the chat. I think I had responded to one question, the first question. I think maybe there's another question that was posed by one of the attendees. So I'll hand over to you, Prof.
Kolani, take those questions, please, and let Lerato respond.
Okay, Lerato, do you see the question on the chat in terms of the KPIs? I think Fiona was asking about the typical KPIs that you would use in terms of evaluating, a system in the metrology environment.
Okay, thank you for the question. If you can see, in the metrology space, there are various laboratories, almost 30 laboratories doing different things. So at the management system level, we look at things like the first one, a percentage of customer satisfaction, like I indicated. And then also the turnaround time, how long does it take to respond, to give the products back, turnaround time and lead times. We have those as the KPIs. And then we also have KPIs for also making sure that we produce quality services. And then we work within the acceptable CMCs and the uncertainties. Uncertainties are those values wherein when we measure something, we consider the so-called the uncertainty budget, where we identify any little thing that can affect my measurements. We list those. So those are supposed to be at the most minimal. We must have less uncertainties, plus or minus something very, 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 very little. So those are some of the things in the space where we make sure that we keep that. And then also we put those looking at all those things that can be cleared up through our management systems. Remember, we have technical ISO standards, and then we also have the ISO standard for our management system. So the technical part of it, we make sure that we always adhere to those. They will help us reduce and achieve those KPIs that we set for the organization. And just not to lose. Remember, I also indicated that maintenance, the number of the accredited laboratories that we maintain, that's very key and objective, because losing one, it means that there are some that are not doing right and we are not accredited for that anymore. Or being on suspension, we don't want that. We keep those up, that we target them not to lose. Thank you.
Thank you, Lerato. I think also Fiona was asking something around the issue of trends, and I think in your presentation, maybe she might have missed it, but you touched on QR codes, some of the technology, some of the ways that the labs and the metrology system is run is to have things that address the 4IR in terms of digitization that will improve the turnaround time, that improves the tracking and so forth. And I think you touched on those issues in the presentation. And I think those are some of the trends that are important to ensure that the metrology system is kept traceable at all times. I don't know if there are others maybe that you think of just sharing with the audience.
Yeah, maybe I can share something that we're operating here in South Africa, and there are other National Metrology Institute and designated institute throughout the whole world. So if you can see, I didn't show this other trend, like as the NMISA, we are here in South Africa, and then in the continent, we have a body called AfriMates, and then globally, we have a body called BIPM. It is in Paris. So everything that is happening globally, we also be part of it. Like digitalization now is the talk of the world, wherein, whether we like it or not, there is a program that is set up for all National Metrology Institute to digitalize what they do. That's why I indicated that we have introduced the customer portal, wherein all customers now, they go through the website, they put what they want, they get quotation there, they pay what they do, they'll only bring the instruments within the organization for the laboratories calibrate and come and collect. But all these things until invoicing and receiving certificate, we do that through that. And again, on the certificates and other things, there's a QR code. You scan that, it will take you back to the history, the traceability of how that instrument was produced. You will see the time, the environment in which that was done, the metrologist who did that, the temperature, the humidity. If there are some components that were put in through the processes, you will see those through scanning that. So we are also we are implementing some other systems again. Like I said, management system is not a standalone thing. There are some digitalization systems again that are being taken place on the non-technical side, like on the HR, on the check side. We are also bringing everything to digital, just trying to sort the technology to make sure that we are relevant, we are not left behind. Because when we are still stuck with the old things that the environment in which you operate is no longer using, the chances are there that you find that people in South Africa, they go and seek traceability in other international organizations because you are no longer relevant. So we're trying to keep the relevancy by bringing in the 4OR and these other things. And we have the systems engineering group that is helping us do that within the organization. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lerato. Just before we close, 16th November, we will be having our conference at SASQ, and just want to remind the colleagues that belonging to a professional body is very much pertinent for you as a professional, because you gain a lot from the community of professionals in terms of engagements, exchange of ideas and thoughts. one of the things you would post, a question, and I think like we do now. So you will be able to get, response timelessly. And that also gives a bit of confidence on your side that you are surrounded, with a lot of like-minded professionals and those also that have seen more ground than you, where you can learn from, as much as also you'll be giving your ideas to others to learn from. So it's a platform, a very important platform to be part of, and we promote that, do get in touch with us and then become part of us. We are part of what we call national quality infrastructure. There's these 4 bodies. We are part of that because we have established a multi-quality stakeholder forum that includes also other institutions, SASQ, include National Lab Association, South African Certification Body. So we are working together as a fraternity of quality in the country with these government entities to ensure that we uplift the value of quality and enable the economic trade, but also make sure our people are safe in terms of consumers and so forth. So please do get in touch with us. We will assist. Prof, with that said, I don't know if there's anything that I might have left before we close off.
Thank you very much, Kolani, for the presentation, Lerato. Just one question I think that was not answered is instrument verification and certification. What is the difference, Lerato? Could you just perhaps pass a comment on that?
You said instrument verification and
certification.
Okay, instrument certification, I think that one is done by, remember we have a certification body, and then we also have the NRCS. So for the verification of the instruments and other things, I mentioned something about to regulate. I gave example on the pressure, like the pressure gauge that we use to put pressure on our tires. That head on its own need to be certified and regulated, and it needs to be checked. So the verification of those instruments and the prototyping is done by the NRCS. Thank you.
Just for the purpose of the audience, who is NRCS?
Oh, NRCS are the South African National Group for Regulating, for the regulatory specifications. They check the regulation. Okay, I'll give everyone here an example. If you go and check the plastic bags that you get when you buy things from the shops, I can't mention the names of the shops, go and check that plastic. You will find that it has an NRCS stamp. It means that it was checked and it was found to be within the specifications and can be used. That is for legal metrology. So those plastic bags, they meet the specifications. The NRCS is for regulating the specifications. So just a little example, today go to the shops, or if you have those plastics at home, try to see those that have the NRCS stamp. Thank you, Prof.
Thank you. Lerato, just also one more thing is that wasn't addressed. If one of our members finds something that's not kosher with a measurement, supposing they're buying petrol and they're saying, well, we're getting less petrol than we should, and there's no certificate. So who can they speak to, who they can report it to, and if there's any kind of a protocol for that?
I think the NRCS can advise on that. If they can go to the website for the NRCS, they can see the services that they offer, and then there will be some options there for them to raise the concerns through them, because they are the regulators for the nation.
Thank you, Lerato.
You're welcome.
I'll just ask if there's any more questions. You may put your hand up. I'll give you a couple of minutes.
Prof is muted.
I'm muted. I'm wondering if anybody got questions, they can put their hands up. Give a few minutes for that. I see Neil. Neil, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Lerato. I hope you can hear me. I've
Yes,
got a
I
quick
can hear you.
question. Lerato, how compulsory is this metrology process in South Africa? I mean, do we find it on, are we supposed to find it on everything? Or is it just a nice to have? That was my first question. My second question is, I hear you mention this international group sitting in Paris. But I mean, we import a lot of stuff from China, from India, so we can get things into the country that have not actually been verified because not everybody belongs to this international body. So how do we get around, a kettle, for example, that's been checked by yourselves locally, and the kettle that I am importing from Alibaba or AliExpress or one of these things. So yeah, I just need to understand that, because if your job is to help trade facilitation and make trade better, is the metrology system then not being undermined by direct imports of, which is growing? I mean, it's growing quite fast. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll get firstly to your first question, like metrology is not just a nice to have. You will realize that once you find that some of the things, I'll give an example, it will be kind of sensitive. Example, in the temperature laboratories, we calibrate the thermometers and the ovens and other things. And then you found that there is a thermometer that is used in hospital that is not calibrated. And then there is a baby in the incubator who is supposed to be kept under a certain temperature. And then they are using an uncalibrated thermometer or a probe to monitor and get the temperature, and they're recording, they keep on recording. But that is not even reference. Maybe it was calibrated even before it was like bought. Do you know that there are chances that we can lose someone's life because of using uncalibrated equipment that, should they were calibrated, they were going to be monitoring and read the correct readings to save those. I'm just giving an example for that. So I'll also give example. You give example of a kettle or something. There is something called Africans Reference Institute, wherein our manufacturers, before they can even accept things, we have the technical specifications that an equipment should meet. And then those are defined in the standards in SABS. So if you find that you procured something, and then on the box of that kettle or the LED lights, people have been procuring LED lights lately, putting all these street lights in their yard. We just bought them from anywhere. If you check on the box, there will be an indication of how much volume or how much volts are supposed to be in that lights. And then if you're not comfortable, you can take, apart from NIMISA were providing traceability, but there are industrial laboratories that do calibration. You can take that to them just to switch that thing for you and check if really that is the volts that is indicated on the box. And some, they come up with certification. When you produce, there will be a certification that comes together with that just to confirm, like QC test passed. We see when we buy things, they say a sticker like QC passed. It means that that was tested by a reputable body, an accredited laboratory that took its traceability from the NMI. Some they can go and take from other countries or wherever. But the fact that they are in line with that traceability chain that I was showing, that from the lab, there should be an unbroken chain that ends up there from the international level coming down to us. So there are some documents that goes together with this. And if you're not comfortable, you can visit the NMISA website and the NRCS, because the NRCS, again, they serve as the control borders as well, where we have to compare what we're getting with our own specifications. Because problem is us not knowing what are the specifications of what we want. And then we just see things, sometimes we find that, wow, this one is affordable as compared to this one. We buy all those things we put at home, whereas we just bring problems. And that's where we bring in the technical barriers to trade. Some things, when at the entry port, they are sampled they are checked against the specification of our country. Some they are sent back because they don't meet the specifications of the South Africans, and then they are not accepted. But some that come through other routes that are not like the legal routes of trade, I think that's what you can see them like roaming around here and like making people's lives difficult. I don't know if I've responded to a question.
Thank you, Lerato.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Lerato, thank you very much for making yourself available this morning. It's again, we say this is the SASQ weekend liftoff. And, you know, we start off the weekend with a nice presentation on quality. I remember when you're talking about metrology and measurement, and remember that I was involved in implementing one of the very first ISO 9000 standards in 1987. And we came across this thing about measurement and calibration. And we were shocked to see that even our thermometers that we are using in the laboratory had to be measured and have traceable measurements. And I remember that it cost us a fortune in those days, in 1987, something like 300 rands, which was very big money, to send the thermometer to NEMISA for standardization and calibration. And we found out that your institute existed with very sophisticated equipment there for calibration. That's why I think it's important for colleagues, and I put it out here, that if you want to visit, have a SASQ site visit with NEMISA, it's a very interesting visit, very interesting equipment, and very interesting people to meet in this measurement space that actually forms the foundation of management systems. So, you know, prior to 1987, we didn't know that measurement was such an important thing for management systems. And if we observe most of the ISO 9000 standards and most of the ISO management systems all have a section about measurement and calibration. And God knows how auditors actually consider that, because I know that in 1987, even we were shocked not only to send it to you once, we had to send it to you every 6 months to be calibrated. So it was very expensive business. Also, I'd just like to mention to colleagues that, that if you have any burning challenges and any burning issues regarding calibration, you can put it to go to our website. There is a contact form that you can fill in your request or your challenge, and we can engage a specialist to come and handle or advise you. With that, I just want to check one thing before I close off. I'm just going to do a poll here, just on a show of hands, is just for you to just tell us whether this session was useful to you. So can you see it on your screens? Please pull that in. Thank you for that. We see that 94% of us here say it was very useful. 6% says not totally, but it's somewhat useful, but we didn't get anybody to say it was not useful. So at least the 6% has found out that they've learned something more. But for me, Lerato, that's excellent. And with that, I just want to give thanks to you to spend the morning with us. We also thanks to Mr. Kalani, who chaired the session, and also to NEMISA for allowing Lerato to do this presentation on their behalf. And all that's left is to thank you. And also, if you want just a show of your hands on the list, you can thank Lerato for that. So with that, we end this and put up your hands to congratulate Lerato.
There was a hand previously from Kim.
Okay, we can
Before you
still
can
go.
ask me
Kim,
to-
go ahead if you want.
Hi, good morning, colleagues. And yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation, Lerato, and for Prof. Roy Rampal for organizing this session. It was quite insightful, and you know, it basically took us on a different dimension in terms of metrology. Many of us, including myself, didn't have a clue in terms of the importance of measurement. We knew measurement, but not in terms of the insight that you've provided today. So thank you so much for starting our weekend well, and stay blessed and have a nice weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Prof.
You're
Kim, for
welcome.
that. And yeah, and Prof. Kim has been an old hand at quality for many, many years as well. So thank you very much, Prof. Ramdas, for that. With that, I'll say goodbye to everybody until the next webinar.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.